I'm doing a challenge where I'm trying to read all of the Harvard classics before the end of the year. I'm in volume 3, and I just finished the essays of Francis Bacon and also the New Atlantis. So the essays of Francis Bacon were interesting. I came across, my general sense of Bacon was of a rich, kind of prideful guy who enjoys like a bachelor's kind of life, and he thinks he has everything figured out. I got a sense that he's pretty prideful. He gives the sense of being a bachelor. He kind of rails against having kids, and his essay on friendship doesn't seem to convey a high value on women on being married. He was married. He married like a 14-year-old girl or 13-year-old girl. So, anyways, it's kind of like the ultimate mansplainer. And he uses scriptures and quotes from other people, but they're not really to learn from the other people. They're more so to advance his own point, because he feels like he has everything figured out. That's kind of the impression I got. I did not get a good impression of Bacon, but he'll do things like he'll promote little lies, and he'll promote secrecy, and he doesn't see women as equals. And anyways, so I have some issues with him. I disagree with a lot of the things, but that said, I do agree with some of the things that he wrote. He has some great quotes about reading, about how some books are meant to be digested and some books are meant to be, just perused lightly and things like that. He has a great quote that money is like muck. It's no good unless it's spread around. I like that quote. I like some of his things that he wrote in his essay about riches and about ambition. So there was good things that he wrote. I also read his New Atlantis, and his New Atlantis is kind of after his own ruin. So after he was kicked out of court for essentially taking bribes, and it's interesting, it feels a lot more repentant than the essays. So it's a story about people who end up in an island nation that kind of has everything figured out. They have good sciences. They're very Christian. They're very devout. They're good people. They're very hospitable. And one thing that I thought was interesting was he talks about how taking bribes was a bad thing, that these people feel like you're being twice paid. You're being paid twice for the same work. And so he's kind of critiquing himself, right, and why he fell. He also has some interesting thoughts about marriage. His marriage kind of falls apart at the end of his life, the real Francis Bacon's life, and he has some interesting writings about marriage there that kind of give the sense that he's more in favor of kind of the Christian ideal of marriage than perhaps he was in the past. So anyways, it was an interesting book. Something that I liked from it is they talked about how when a guy has 30 descendants over the age of 3, in this ideal civilization, they do a special feast of the family. Just kind of the idea that you celebrate having children and posterity, which was something he wouldn't have celebrated. In his essays, he talks about how the greatest men don't have children, but in the New Atlantis, they celebrate having a big posterity. And anyways, it seems like Bacon, it's a different Bacon who writes the New Atlantis than who writes the essays. And I found that interesting. And we'll see how Milton goes. Milton's the next book in volume 3 of the Harvard Classics.